and the Near East remained. Until finally, in the 3rd century AD, the Iranians, revitalized by religious fundamentalism, swept out of the east into the fairest provinces of the Roman Empire and made alliances with the Germanic barbarians to cross the Rhine and the Danube. And the 3rd century saw an economic crisis at Rome, a political crisis, a military crisis. Rome emerged from it finally, but in such an altered state as to be unrecognizable. Individual liberty was gone, became a regulated economy, regulated society. If your father was a baker, you had to be a baker, and crushed the middle class by taxation. And even that didn't work. And in the 7th century, under the banner of Islam, the Middle East would sweep out all the way to Spain, and the fairest provinces of the Roman Empire would fall to Germans and the Arab conquest. And Germanic barbarian kings like Theodoric would dwell in the ruined palaces of the Caesars. If Julius Caesar were to come back, and that's who you should have asked about legacy, Julius Caesar, conjured him up, rise up the way he would in a Shakespearean play and tell us what the real legacy of any leader is. If Julius Caesar were to come back, he would tell you that we have, by ignoring the lessons of history over the last 8 years, now I'll be open with you, I'm a great admirer of President Bush, strong supporter of his, but by ignoring the lessons of history over the last 8 years, we have been drawn into a quagmire in the Middle East. We have left it more dangerous than it was, but our commitment in the Middle East has blinded us over these years to Russia. Russia is to us what the Germanic tribes were to the Romans, the great problem of Central Europe. When communism collapsed in that country, it was the expectation of the Russians that we would come in with a Marshall Plan, rebuild their economy on such a basis, pouring in vast amounts of money, that democracy would become viable. Instead, we did not. And I said years ago, Russia, I know Russian, I spend time in Russia, I talk to ordinary Russians. Russia is simply waiting for a leader like Adolf Hitler. They are chauvinistic, xenophobic, expansionistic. They have felt a deep humiliation at the loss of their empire. And Vladimir Putin is one of the most clever leaders in the world today. And now, the economic crisis. Thucydides talked about the imponderables of history, the great Athenian historian of the 5th century BC. The imponderables. A statesman can plan everything, but then suddenly something like a plague happens. But this economic crisis was not an imponderable. The vast mortgage and debt of this country was clear to all, and steps could have been taken. So now we find ourselves with a situation in which we have to put the economy first. But the foreign problems of Russia, Iran, and the power of China cannot be walled out while we solve our economic crisis. Ultimately, all things human pass away. What matters is the legacy that a nation leaves behind. And if you had asked Caesar Augustus, what will be the legacy of your empire? He would have said, well, the great roads and aqueducts. You can still drive on a Roman road where I do archaeological work, 2,000 years old. A bridge in Rome still carries traffic that was built in 63 BC. Or he might have said our Roman law will be our great legacy. Not one emperor would have told you that the greatest legacy of Rome, and this is just a historical statement, was the result of a teacher born on the fringes of the Roman Empire when Caesar Augustus sent out that decree that all the world was to be taxed. Christianity was the greatest single legacy of the Roman Empire, and yet no one in the highest places of power, with all their sources of communication, would have understood that. We too will pass away. Do you believe that? My students don't. I asked them, well, someday we can say, here, will somebody in Grand Rapids, one day, archaeologist, comb through the ruins of Grand Rapids, and they'll find these golden arches. And they'll say these are found all over the world. And they will ponder the cult of Ronald and what rites were carried on in those huge vats. So no, we will pass away. What matters is the legacy that we leave behind. The great poet Virgil told the Romans this, and he said, "It will be your legacy to have brought peace to the world, to war down evil rulers, and to raise up the weak and oppressed." And our greatest presidents have always understood that. That is our mission, to bring freedom to the world. More people live in freedom today than at any time in history because of the price that Americans have paid. Now, we lose sight of that mission. Sometimes we don't even want it. Isn't that true? But it is there. This nation, as Franklin Roosevelt said, will endure as it has endured. It will come through this economic crisis. It will find again the deep resources of the American people. And this I tell you, there has never been in history a people so magnanimous, so generous, so willing to sacrifice and to give back as the American people. We will find that mission again, and that will be our great legacy. Well, thank you for listening to me. I'd be glad if there are any questions. Yes?
That was a wonderful run through history, but I would like to know how you can credit the Roman Empire for the birth of Christianity, and then several specific things that you admire about George W. Bush.
You ask how I could credit the Roman Empire with the birth of Christianity. Well, that's a very good question, but it's a simple fact that the whole of the birth, mission, and death of Jesus took place within the framework of the Roman Empire.
Well, how can they take credit for it?
Well, I don't know if I gave them credit for it. I said it was their greatest legacy.
No.
And the point is, you don't know what's going on in the world today that might be far more important than anything you're seeing on CNN. But Jesus was born in Bethlehem because of the Roman bureaucrats. When the empire was annexed Judea, the first thing they did was to put a census in place. And the word and bureaucrats never change. Don't you see? You can take somebody who works for the IRS today, teach them Latin, put them in a time machine, send them back to the Roman Empire, and they'd start right up. And the great fear of a bureaucrat is you're going to fall between the cracks. You're going to say you didn't know where you were supposed to register for the census. So they gave a very concrete decree. Everybody is to go to the place where they were born. Not where they live now, but where they're born. So this carpenter who had been born in Bethlehem had to take his pregnant wife up to Bethlehem of Judea. He worked in Nazareth, but he had to take her up to Bethlehem of Judea. And then Jesus goes all over the Roman province of Judea, teaching. He is then brought before another bureaucrat, Pontius Pilate. And Pontius Pilate knows he's innocent, that he has been delivered up just because the professors, the Pharisees, are jealous of him. And he tries every way he can to get Jesus off. But he's tried under Roman law. And under Roman law, you are guilty until proven innocent.